This year will bring a busy midterm election season for Wisconsin. There will be races for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, governor's office, U.S. House of Representatives, and both chambers of the legislature. Ahead of 2026, we asked both the Democratic and Republican state party chairs what their New Year's resolutions are for their parties.
To me, if I have a New Year's resolution, in addition to making sure that everybody gets through the holiday season, the New Year's safely, and is that we can do better in this state, and Republicans are going to offer the opportunity for people to do that.
To ensure that every single person knows that we are the party that is fighting to make life more affordable for the working class, defending your fundamental rights and freedoms to live your life the way you want to without interference from the government.
The Wisconsin legislature will be back in session next week.